What is your favorite public speaking tip? My favorite tip actually comes from journalism. My background is journalism. I have a master's in magazine publishing, so 2 degrees. And I've been a journalist for a very long time for Playboy, the New York Post, other folks. I did a keynote recently. In fact, you can see the link to it. I believe I left the link below. But I recently did a keynote that went public for the American Society of Journalists and Authors, so you can learn more about my background. Our rule in journalism is show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. In other words, if you're telling a story, you want to take the audience there versus telling them what you're going to do. A really simple example. I want you to feel motivated today. So I'm going to tell you about this. That's not the vibe because you're telling the audience how to feel. Instead, you want to say, I was going through so much stuff. I had lost my job. My wife left me, but I had this spark to keep moving. And that spark enabled me to create what I have today. These are the 3 things that I learned when I was at the darkest period of time in my life. That's first one was tell. I'm going to motivate you. The second one is I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to tell something, as I say in book writing for authors, and I'm an author as well, obviously. The more detailed you can get with your personal journey, the more relatable it is. The more specific, the more relatable. And sometimes we're afraid to be vulnerable or have those intimate discussions, for lack of a better term, because we feel like it's selfish. But it's actually not true. The more honest we can be with the people we're trying to connect with, and this could be you doing a toast at a wedding. It could be you doing a presentation as you're trying to get funding for your startup. It could be like myself, you're on a stage and you're getting paid money and people are coming to hear you speak. It's applicable to all of them. So it all comes down to storytelling. What is the story? What is the story? And if you can figure out what that important story is and how it represents how you would like the audience to feel, then you're on to something. Often we think with the reverse. I want them to be motivated. No, I want to tell them a great story. And that story in itself will motivate them. That ends up being the difference. There's a lot of other tips. I actually talk about a few in the videos I'm going to be showing the links to in a moment, but all the links are below and getting deeper into some of the stuff that I'm discussing. Now, from a very practical standpoint, well, actually, before we get to that, if you want to check out my keynotes, feel free to check them out. Almost all of them are available online. And it was something I decided a while ago where I was talking to a mentor of mine at the time. And I think I did a keynote and I got paid well for it. And I want to share it with more folks, but I wasn't sure if that would get me less gigs, if that makes sense. Because you're kind of, giving the secret sauce. It's like someone coming into your kitchen and then are they still going to buy the ravioli, right? Sorry for the analogy, but I can't think of a better one. And my mentor said, well, they're not actually, when someone hires you to speak, they're not hiring you just because of the content of your speech or to get the same thing they get from like a 2D computer screen. They're hiring you because of the intimacy you create when you're there in person or even in a virtual setting. There's a certain connection. That's why I love doing these lives. There's a certain connection that does not happen when I do the recorded videos. And this is like episode 343, I think, 342. You can tell me in the notes, in the comments. But these have, the live ones have a different intimacy than the ones that I record here in my studio, aka office, in my studio, and then I serve it to you carefully edited. So you hear my creaky voice because of my allergies. You hear me stutter over certain things. There's certain intimacy with that. So when I learned that from my mentor several years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm putting just about all my stuff is available on bringyourworth.tv. So again, if you're looking for that motivation or if you want examples of this, be sure and check out the link below. And hopefully I can walk the walk for y'all instead of just talking the talk as far as these potentially abstract ideas. If we're going to get practical for a second, which I am using it right now, Throat Coat by Traditional Medicinals Inc. I learned about these guys because if you know, it's one of those products. I learned about these guys when I was actually working on my last audiobook for my book Career Remix. I think it's over here. Yeah. My book Career Remix. Get the gig you want based on the skills you've got. Available everywhere, as always. And this was about, I think I did the audiobook about 1.5 years ago from this recording. And I did audiobooks before, but I've always done like traditional audiobooks, or I'm sorry, at-home audiobooks, where it's like literally in my closet over here. I'll get into this in a later live episode later on this month, so check it out for future episodes. But I recorded the audiobooks and always have recorded audiobooks at home. So I do it on my leisure meaning after I got the kids to bed. And then I'd stay up and do it. Sometimes you can hear it in my voice with some of my earlier audiobooks. This was different, where I actually worked with Union Square, which is actually a part of Barnes & Noble Publishing. So it's very much a traditional book. And then I was renting a place downtown, because I'm based in Las Vegas, so right off the strip downtown. And it was like a real studio in the whole thing. And there was an engineer and a couple other folks. And it's like we had to take takes. And it was very much, it felt like a production, capital P. And I think it ended up being about a week. Drop the kids off at school, drive straight downtown, and then be on the air for 4 hours, 5 hours, and then go and pick them up from school. And then by second or third day, I had the froggy voice, and they hooked me up with this. It's really simple. It's tea, nothing special about it aside from medicinal stuff in it that actually helps coat your throat. Can't even say it. That's why it's called throat coat. I swear by it. When I started doing a lot more live shows, it was either earlier this year or late last year. A lot more live shows. I found it online, which is the same link I'm giving you here, and I bought like a box of them. I gave some to my kids. They didn't like the taste of it. It's not the best taste, but if you do it with some honey, it works out well. This is what the pros use. In fact, there's a guy in the neighborhood who was having laryngitis, who also works in like the performing arts. And I was like, oh, it sounds like you have some trouble. Have you tried some throat coat? And he was like, of course. And then he was putting me on game, as they say, where he was like, yeah, everybody uses throat coat. And I was like, how did I not know this? If you're doing a lot of public speaking, if you're doing podcasts, even like you're doing what I'm doing right now, where you're doing a lot of live shows through this month of September, I'm doing all live shows every workday. And so I'm about episode, 6 into this, and my throat's already starting to get itchy. Please rock with this. Yeah, I learned this the hard way. And it was a long time where I didn't know about this. And ended up being hard to figure out how to take care of myself, frankly. Ended up being a tough part of it. So that's a really big tip for that. Excuse me. Speaking of coughs. The other recommendation. Should literally take my own medicine. The other recommendation for sound is, I'm going to show it to you and it's going to jack up the sound, but at least you'll see what's going on. The mic. So you guys can see it. There we go. The mic that I'm rocking with right now. So you get the spatial audio for you two that are, you two. Hopefully it's more than 2 people. Y'all that are listening. I'm gonna go and put the mic down because it's awkward. And I'm sure it's messing up the sound. So it's the Audio Technica. I've never had to say it out loud, so forgive me. The Audio Technica ATR 2100X-USB. Now, immediately the USB part, pardon me, the USB part tells you right away, this is USB, so it plugs right into your computer. I use StreamYard, which is linked below. StreamYard is a website that allows you to do live podcasts or live interview shows, live type of streaming, live streaming as the kids call it nowadays. This plugs right into my, I have a MacBook, plugs right into there. There's also another version of it that uses, is it USB-C? No, USB-A. So USB, as we know it, is actually USB-C. Then there's a tinier USB, which is actually called USB-A. There's a few different versions of it. This works really well for a few different reasons. And I'll get to it again in a future show where I talk more about audio equipment. First of all, this is a cardioid. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Again, correct me in the comments for you audiophiles out there. But it's cardioid, which means that you can probably barely see it, but the mic is facing me. So even though I'm probably, I don't know, maybe a foot away from the mic, it's getting rid of ignoring all the noise around here. So there's a little bit of construction outside. There's always construction in Las Vegas, just to warn you if you ever visit. So there's construction outside. There's a noise from the hot box lamp, which is the light that's being put on me. And most of that is being cut out. Even my kids are at school, but even if my kids were at home, it will be way more focused on me. So that's the first benefit of it. The second benefit is I love the clarity of the sound. I had some previous ones, and I've talked about them in earlier episodes, that were good mics, but they didn't seem to, I guess it's back to the cardioid thing. It didn't seem to focus in. This is important for the second thing I'm going to talk about here. Excuse me, which is understanding the new world we're in. Each year I've gotten paid more for my keynotes and/or it's been to bigger audiences. I consider that a blessing. The reason why I bring that up to you is that even though the scale of the audiences I speak to and how much I get paid has gotten higher, I'm actually doing more virtually than I am physically. And so I started public speaking, probably at my first paid public speaking gig. I want to say around the time I first spoke at the second stage of TED. So I want to say about 7 years ago. And I believe the payment was, I'm thinking about a whole bunch of jokes right now that aren't appropriate at the moment, but I got paid decently. And the basic idea was that I had the Bites as Entrepreneur, the first book in the Bring Your Worth series. Again, the compilation's coming out in a month. And I was doing that, but I was selling books in the back. And selling books in the back is actually how I got paid for a lot of these that were free services. You know what I mean? So like the local volunteer groups and Kiwanis and that kind of vibe, local Elks Lodge, that type of vibe. But it taught me my chops. By the time it got to now, then I had my in-person in Benton Harbor. Shout out to them, Lake Michigan University, around this time last year. It was a little bit earlier than this time last year. So I had that last year. But a lot of my keynotes, including the one for ASGA that I just did a couple months ago, that's now available at bringyourworth.tv, those were virtual. So you have to understand the new environment. So a lot of the speaking you're going to be doing will be through this computer. And that means having the right setup. It means having your lighting good and all those different things. This gets into this a little bit. And then in a future episode, I'm actually going to talk quite a bit more about the setup that I have so you can have good speaking and engagements right here. Particularly if you want to get paid to speak, then you got to level up what you're doing. I'm constantly leveling up my stuff. As I mentioned on a recent live episode, I just improved my lighting, which is why sometimes there's shadows and I'm still trying to get it right. But I know it's a much more powerful light than the ring light that I had for several years. I'm improving my mic. I just got this new mic about 2-3 months ago. Like, those details should always be in practice. Be sure and check out this episode because some of the public speaking you're going to be doing is going to be on Zoom calls. Some of the public speaking you're going to be doing is going to, excuse me, is going to be through a computer lens, through a Google Meet. It might be through a FaceTime call. I've had coaching appointments like that where I was a coach and I'm coaching them through FaceTime. So understanding how to use technology is super valuable. Be sure and check out this episode. They came out about 2 years ago, but it's chocked with different insights that I think will help you on your way.